T-Wolves lose to the Suns again. They dropped to the 3 seed. I got our Wolves expert ready to break it all down. It's all coming up next on the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's up? We're back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. Look at this, pinch hitting. That's the man, Andrew Dukowitz on X, at ADukeMN. And Andrew, before we jump into all the action, quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, buddy. I'm not going to go over all the storylines. Everybody knew what was, on the line heading into this one. 1 seed still up for grabs technically. And maybe most importantly, honestly, you just want to go out here and exercise some demons against this Suns team before the playoffs. So got to take care of business today. That was the mindset heading in. Unfortunately, more of the same. 19 turnovers in the first half alone. That was a franchise worst in the history of the Wolves organization. 11 of those 19 came in the first quarter alone. So just put a bow wrap on that gift to the Suns. Monster advantage right out the gate. 26 points off those turnovers for the Suns at halftime. Compare that to just 6 turnovers for Phoenix, in which the Wolves only cashed in a measly 3 points. So you go into halftime down 13, a 23-point difference in points off turnovers. My 5-year-old niece could tell you, okay, that's going to be the difference in this one, at least heading into halftime. So Wolves try to scratch and claw their way back a few times. They did get it to single digits once or twice, but just not enough for the, complete comeback there. They dug themselves into too big of a hole, I would say. Wolves, 3rd time in a row now, they get stomped by this Phoenix team. Now they drop to the 3 seed. They take on Phoenix come playoff time. We'll dive into all that here in a few moments, but they lose today, 125-106. By the way, they waved the white flag. If you guys didn't watch it, they did wave the white flag with a few minutes left. They pulled the starters, got guys like Luka Garza in the mix. But Andrew, kick us off with your biggest takeaways from what we just watched, and then we'll get into the playoff picture here shortly.
I mean, I hate to make it like a typical Minnesota trying to figure out the bright side in a bad situation.
Yeah.
But it should have been a lot worse. I mean, with how they were shooting in the mid 70% for most of the first quarter, it really should have been just a 20-point lead that went from pretty much the first quarter to the end of the game. I guess my biggest takeaway that I saw watching the game was, one, the crowd was incredible. Like, I was at Target Center. They were phenomenal from tip to the end of the game.
Yeah, you were there live. You were at the Target Center just hours ago. Yeah.
The other thing I'd say is just, if they found one thing out, it's that Jusuf Nurkic really kind of adds to their offense. He was plus 27 in 20 minutes. Rudy Gobert got him into foul trouble and then kind of hunted him early in the second quarter and in the second half. And when he came out of the game, the difference from a Nurkic to a Drew Eubanks or Bol kind of handcuffs their offense. They just can't run that pick and roll. They can't take up space the same way. So I guess on a bright side, I would say if they could target that and get that to happen before they're down 25, that's probably a way they could keep in the games in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that makes sense too. That makes sense. We'll dive into that matchup a little bit more as far as X's and O's goes segment 2. But back to the turnovers, man. Just as a observer of this team for the past 82 games, though, we've talked about this so many times on this show throughout the season because this team, for whatever reason here, Andrew, they've gone through these multiple game spurts where they come out typically early in games to shoot themselves in the foot with so many just these silly kind of just lackadaisical, costly turnovers. Been kind of a common theme throughout the entire year. And then you'll get a few games there. They clean everything up. Everything looks good again. And you're thinking, okay, all right, we're all right. All right. They figured it all out. And then all of a sudden, it just rears its ugly head back up. And it just continues to get them in trouble. It digs them into these. It's almost exhausting. I'll call it an exhausting hole early in ball games. And when it's against top tier opponents like the Phoenix Suns, call a spade, man. It's going to come back to haunt you probably more nights than not. That's going to be the difference more times than not. And I think also, too, here, Andrew, we should give credit where credit's due, right? I mean, this Suns team, if you look back, they've kind of underachieved all season long. Now they're picking up steam right at the end, heading into the playoffs with some serious momentum, playing some best basketball that we thought they should be playing for most of the regular season. And they just came out, today, it was pretty obvious from the jump. They were more aggressive. They asserted themselves early on. They moved the ball well. They came out and played some excellent basketball, top to bottom, start to finish. It just felt like the Wolves weren't ready for it, to be honest. So now you just hope, as you kind of touched on, it's a learning lesson. And maybe in a roundabout way, maybe this was exactly what the Wolves needed before it really counts come playoff time to kind of wake up, splash some cold water on your face, and get their act together. Because yeah, man, if they don't, I'm telling you right now, as fun as this regular season was, you're looking at a possible one and done scenario when the intensity gets ramped up and the opposing teams are in kind of do or die or fight or flight mode, like the Suns have kind of been the past 2 times they've played them. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I do want to do a little bit more of a deep dive in segment 2 on Cap, but just your knee-jerk reaction. Karl-Anthony Towns, you've seen him on the court now the past 2 games before they head into the playoffs. I guess what's just your overall assessment? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse than you did after his first game back? And, have you seen enough to say confidently the rust is gone and this dude's going to be, in full form 100% come game 1 of the playoffs?
I don't think the rust is all the way gone. I mean, there was a couple 3-point shots that, front ironed and he normally makes. I think it's, as it's always been with Cat, I think it's more of the mental side of it. Going off of your turnovers thing, there was a little bit of a run in the first quarter where Minnesota was trying to respond back, and he just throws like a behind the back pass to Ant on the wing for a turnover. Mm-hmm. And it's just, that's kind of been the story with him almost his entire career here, is all the talent in the world, but just really questionable decisions, stray voltage, throwback to last year. But I think I'd say he's pretty close to being there. I mean, he first game back, moved the ball really well, made good decisions. He almost seems to be having like this internal struggle between making the good pass and making some sort of like Jokic-esque flashy pass. But again, I think that's just what you get with Towns now. There's going to be some games where he scores 35 and he's great. And there's going to be some games where he's doing a behind the back pass out of bounds to Anthony Edwards.
Right. Yeah, you take the good and bad with him for sure. You just, again, I think my biggest fear, like a lot of people's, obviously, I'm not going to come on here and say this team's better without Karl-Anthony Towns. That'd just be silly. I'm not going to do that. But there was a fear, and I was just a little pessimistic about the cohesion, the chemistry. I mean, they have really morphed and adapted without him for 5 straight weeks, 13-4 during his absence. And all of a sudden, you switch things up so late in the game. And now, obviously, they had him for the first, 3 quarters of the season. So it shouldn't be that hard or that intense of a change in adaptation. But it's just the fear of this is all happening so quickly now. And now to lose the game again, your last game, game 82 before the playoffs, a game in which you were hoping to exercise some demons. That was my biggest fear and worry. So good news is they got a full week to go to the drawing board. You got to trust Coach Finch. You got to lean on him, make some proper adjustments. It's not a talent issue, but I will say again, Phoenix Suns, they're getting hot at the right time. You kind of touched on it. Maybe one more, whether it's a specific player, but just help us look glass half full here. Find another positive. Because, again, they've got absolutely steamrolled the past 3 games by this team. What is another bright spot we can lean on and kind of take away? Like Rudy Gobert, man, he continues to be an animal. He impresses me. I know that much. What about you?
I don't think Chris Finch tipped their hand a whole lot.
That's good. Yeah.
That's good. Glass half full. They had Ant guarding Kevin Durant for most of the game. They had Mike sticking with Beal even when Beal was kind of killing them. They played a lot of drop coverage. I'm assuming all of that was kind of by design of let's try and beat them doing what we do. And if we don't beat them, we still have things to switch to in the playoffs. Because if Finch was throwing everything at the wall and they would have lost by 20, I think that would have been a lot worse. But they kept a lot of bullets in the chamber, so to say. They do have some options with switching defensive assignments, playing the pick and roll differently. I do think that the next game is going to be a lot better than this one.
Yeah, I mean, it can't really be that much worse. And again, you clean up some turnover. Obviously, turnover is part of the game. We all get that. Every team's going to have turnover. It's not like football where, you lose the turnover battle by 1 and all of a sudden your chances of winning go down drastically and dramatically by 50, 60, 70% sometimes. It's part of the game in basketball. I totally get that. But, I mean, you clean up that even halfway and all of a sudden that single digit deficit is, within one possession at a certain, juncture in the game. So I got to imagine that's going to be the focus for sure. Box score scouting, I always say it doesn't tell the whole story. Something to go off of here. I'm just going to read off a couple box score numbers here. Ant, 13 points, 5 turnovers, man. Rudy, 21 points, back-to-back 20-plus point games, 7 boards. Conley, he did his best, man. 4 of 5 from 3, 17 points. Really just dragged and willed this team just to stay competitive for 3.5 quarters. Cat, again, 10 points, 5 turnovers. Jaden, 6 points, 0 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 turnovers. Only 3 points off the bench. Naz Reid only 10 points off the bench. I guess just final thoughts. When you hear some of those numbers, a final chance to kind of call out anyone else for good or bad today.
Jaden had a tough game. There was a lot of tough shot attempts, tough decisions. Just a real tough Jaden game. But again, he's the likelihood that Jaden's going to have that game again. I mean, hopefully he just got it out of its system and plays within the flow better next game. But the other thing, Mike Conley, for a guy that had to guard Beal for almost his entire time on the court,
right,
and then to put that effort in on offense, I just, as a mid 30-year-old dude myself, I would be
can't imagine, right?
On the ground.
Imagine. Yeah, can't imagine. All right, plenty more deep dive on the Wolves. We'll touch into this playoff preview versus the Suns. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by Stitch Fix. Not eBay Motors, it's Stitch Fix. Because with Stitch Fix, you get your own personal stylist who understands your style, your size, and most importantly, your budget. And the best part is they do all the shopping for you. That makes it, without a doubt, the easiest way to update your wardrobe closet this spring season. All you got to do, you tell your stylist your size, style, and budget, and they'll take care of the rest. And my favorite part, no subscription required. You just order a new box how you want it, when you want it. And if you don't like it, no problem, send it back on the house. They got free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges. It's style that makes you feel as good as you look. So go get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. All right, man. Obviously, we know the path now. You mentioned it. Nuggets won today. OKC won today. That means the Wolves are kind of locked into this 3 seed. Huge bummer, dude. Just given how close they were to this 1 seed all season long. And now the difference, right? Almost just mentally, the difference dropping all the way from the top of the food chain, home court advantage throughout, all the way to the 3 seed. It's just not the way you wanted to end the regular season and head into the playoffs with that kind of momentum. It just puts a bad taste in your mouth, I guess. But I digress. This Suns team, they're red hot. They clearly have the Wolves number. What's the first thing you're emphasizing or trying to fix if you're Coach Finch this next week before game 1? Something's got to change, right? And like you mentioned, I'm glad you called it out. Maybe they didn't show their whole hand playing this poker series right now.
I think you said it. Turnovers has to be the top priority.
Mm-hmm.
I think Finch, there's a reason that J-Mac went in there so early, and there's a reason Kyle Anderson went in there so early. He was trying to get it fixed on the fly, but turnovers have to get fixed. I think the other thing would be they got to figure out how to, and again, I'm assuming that what they did today is what they're planning to do, which I don't think is the case, but they got to figure out that drop coverage.
Yes. Yeah.
Same thing the Clippers did to, or was it the Clippers or the Thunder or whoever did to Utah in the past years, where they just eat them alive in the mid-range and off of pick and rolls. I think they're going to be more aggressive in the playoffs, but those are kind of the two things of Bradley Beal can't go scoring 30-plus points again.
Yeah, and to that point, okay, they've lost every time to Phoenix now. The first time when Cat played, they had their worst defensive rating game of the season. When he didn't play, they had their worst offensive rating of the season. Today, it was the turnovers. Talk to me about how they can get back to Timberwolves basketball, though, right? Like how it's looked all season long. What got you here in the first place, which, again, like you mentioned, I would imagine would be getting back to their bread and butter on the defensive side of the ball, which is their real identity and their real strength. Is it a matchup thing? Is there something in the lineups that you're seeing that maybe Coach Finch should experiment switching up? A lot of people in the stream, maybe they're half joking, maybe not, saying maybe Cat's got to come off the bench. I don't know, but after 3 straight pretty brutal losses, again, maybe a drastic change should be in the works.
I think it's going to be an assignment thing more than anything.
Okay.
And they had Cat guarding Grayson Allen for most of the game. And when
Right.
you have like Devin Booker going off a pick and roll, Nurkic is there, going to roll hard. You can't hedge with Gobert because theoretically then you have Ant or Cat leaving KD or Allen to go cover Nurkic. They're going to have to figure out where to put Cat defensively where he can still help, or they're going to have to figure out what to do with Gobert, whether that's maybe this series Gobert's playing closer to 20, 25 minutes. My dream would be they just figure out a way to use Gobert to get Nurkic in foul trouble and kind of eliminate that. Because, again, in tonight's game, the drop-off from Nurkic to Eubanks, I mean, they were competitive when Eubanks was out there, when Nurkic was out there. Even though he gets a bad rap as a defender, what he brings offensively on those pick and rolls is just you can't do that hedge. You can't blitz.
Any chance at all? You just give me a one-word answer, and I think I know the answer. But any chance at all you start Naz Reid and you bench Karl-Anthony Towns? You have him coming off the bench. I mean, I only bring it up because there is so much in the stream right now about maybe you got to bench Karl-Anthony Towns. You set the egos aside. That would be insane. I highly doubt that would happen. Probably 100-1. No chance, right?
No. I could see if this series goes a certain way where like McDaniels is getting benched for Naz.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Cat would ever get benched for Naz. And I also love Naz Reid. I have the towel. I don't think
you got the towel. That's how we know you got the towel. Yep.
I think there's just, if you're going to go out and you're going to lose this series to the Suns and give this too big thing a go, you got to go out with Towns.
That's such a great point, man. If we're going to go down, we're going to go down swinging the way we kind of set this blueprint up from the get-go. We don't want to be sitting there all summer long, all off season saying, man, what if, right? This is our identity. This is how we drew it up. This is the foundation, right, of the entire roster and our strengths and granted our weaknesses at times as well. But you got to go out swinging the way you came in, I think, as well. I've asked a lot of people this, whether it's, Sam, Tyler, Jack, who do you think is going to be or needs to be the team X factor come playoff time? And I've got a lot of different answers, by the way, along the way. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Your turn now. Which guy outside of the obvious, right? Anthony Edwards, Gobert, etc. Who's got to be the wild card, though, in a good way to help this team advance out of the first round of the playoffs, in your opinion, and why?
To me, it has to be Nikhil. I actually wrote about it last week of just he's having his career best year basically across the board. If they could, and again, as a 5'9" man myself, I love me some Jordan McLaughlin. But if they could replace his point minutes with Nikhil and that 8-man rotation be Anderson, Naz, Nikhil off the bench, if he can just elevate a little bit more on that playmaking, what he brings defensively, what he brings as a shooter, what he brings just like attitude wise. I mean, his job has to be so exhausting. Just defense, full court, almost the entire game. If he can just add that last little bit of playmaking, I think this team could go to different places.
Yeah, I'm glad you named those two names specifically because I'm going to ask you about the bench and the depth here in a second. But first, don't go anywhere. Again, segment 3, we're going to recap some of the Wolves' regular season's best moments. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors, they got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to the ultimate peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, eBay Motors, they got it all. Check this out. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With all the parts parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. All right, man, we're officially done with this 2023-2024 regular season. So give me your top 5 games or moments of what's transpired over these last 82 games. Plenty to choose from. It's been an absolute roller coaster. So many big games, fun times through it all. A mix of games / moments. We'll go a little hybrid here. Your top 5, starting with number 5. What do you got?
Number 5, I have the Wolves win over the Clippers, the 118-110 win. Coming off of 2 losses, it was starting to get the, oh no, this is where the wheels come off. We're going to keep falling. And I mean, looking back, Kawhi, yeah, he only played the first half, but the Wolves kind of beat the doors off of him in the first half. And it was just a different Wolves vibe, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. And I think absolutely that's got to be on almost everybody's top 5 list there as well. All right, number 4, what do you got?
Number 4, I think a lot of people would have higher, but it would be the Wolves sweeping the Warriors 3-0. Win back-to-back, winning the Rudy Gobert chokeout game. All of the stuff Draymond's been saying on his podcast about the Wolves, I think it just really felt like kind of the little brother getting a swing in on the big brother.
Yeah.
Almost that like changing of guard feel where they're not ready to give up their spot, but they kind of had to this year.
And the Warriors, I'm going to have to pull it up. Are the Warriors out of it? Do we know? Or did they sneak in? They're in the play-in? Okay. So they still got a chip and a chair and a chance, but not the same Warriors team that we're used to. Number 3 on your list. What do you got?
I have that Ant dunk over John Collins.
Oh man.
You know, I think Russillo on his podcast said it best. If it just makes you feel like a kid again, like not a lot of things in this world that connect everyone. And like, no matter where you are in the world, you can say that dunk was awesome, which
not many things. You're right. You get to a certain age, and as much as we all love sports, but you get to a certain age where it takes a lot for a grown man to jump out of the seat, right? To jump out of their chair or on their couch and start screaming like a little schoolgirl. That was one of those moments, and that's what Anthony Edwards does. He continues to be must-watch TV. All right, number 2 on your list. What do you got?
Number 2 was the first game against the Nuggets way back on November 1st. Again, beat the doors off the Nuggets. I think Jokic had like 28 points, but they held him to 3 assists, which that to me was just the like, okay, this is again what this team could be. Like they have the ability to beat the champs. And so early in the season too, especially how it started with kind of, you know, coming out and losing to the Hawks and a tough start at Toronto and all of that. Just able to go in there, see what they're capable of.
Yeah, no, that was definitely that in the Boston game. I don't know if you got Boston number 1 or not, but that was definitely where, you know, you kind of wake up and a lot of people nationally wise, right? The national experts even are forced to look back and go, okay, all right, I think this Timberwolves team, they might be legit. All right, number 1 on your list, favorite game / moment of this regular season. What do you got?
Number 1 on my list, I was sitting behind the Memphis bench for this game.
Oh, boy.
And it's the February 28th game where Ant decided he was just going to shut down Jaren Jackson Jr. and lead a comeback for the Wolves. And, I mean, the moment just happened. It was Jaren Jackson said something to Ant along the bench. Ja Morant was jawing at him. And then it just like a flip switched, and Ant just became this bigger than life person that could shut down a 7'2" center. And then I think he scored like 5 out of 6 baskets on offense, led him to the win, which it's just, you know, there's a lot of Ant moments that, you know, bring up, is he going to be one of those all-time greats? But that moment for me was the real kind of clear cut one this season of when he's going to be 27, 28 years old, he's going to be unstoppable.
That's the thing, right? We were all hoping, praying, assuming, all right, you're going to go into this year. Ant's going to kind of take over a little bit more as the guy, right? Quote unquote,
Mhm.
the guy on this Wolves team. And you saw so many flashes of it. It wasn't consistent enough to call him that superstar in that maybe top tier, that blue chip class of NBA players yet. But you see all the makings of it. And I think the projection, right? The trajectory he's on certainly showcases that. He just needs to continue to fine tune his game a little bit. And I'll just say this too, phenomenal list, top to bottom. Loved it, 1 through 5. I know the playoffs are the A topic. And that's ultimately here, Andrew, what's going to decide how this
Mhm.
entire season is looked at when we look back on this year 2, 3, 4 years from now. But it's kind of a bummer this regular season, if you're a Wolves fan, has come to an end because we just had so many fun nights. Sounds like you were at the Target Center quite a bit. So many fun nights. We watched some award-winning individual seasons and performances from some of these guys. So many of the negative kind of Debbie Downer Minnesota sports narratives changed with this team this year. And it was, I think personally, in my opinion, from start to finish, top to bottom, just an absolute treat to cover and watch this team for the past 5.5 months. Real quick here, we got a couple minutes left. You know, I think about, all right, we just played 82 games now. I think back to the beginning, right? The preseason. I talked to so many Wolves experts that were kind of tuned in. I remember talking about preseason predictions and things like that. A lot of people had them around the 45 to 48-ish wins, I'll say. Obviously, they crushed that. Best season win total wise, maybe ever. Other big talking points was, okay, number one, this was going to be the team's best depth/bench unit they've had in years. So I just want to ask you from like a letter grade perspective here, how much you think the depth and bench did this season compared to expectations? Because obviously, you know, you got a guy like Naz Reid coming off the bench. He might win Sixth Man of the Year over Malik Monk. So that's huge. But you
Mhm.
think back all the way back to the early of the year, right? Shake Milton, Troy Brown, that combo was anything but effective. Then you get Monte Morris in the mix. That helps a lot. J-Mac gets heated up. Nas been solid. What do you think? How'd the bench do compared to expectations at the beginning of the year?
I think I'd give him a solid B plus.
Yeah.
Beginning of the year, the expectation was pretty high. I mean, Troy Brown was a starter with the Lakers before he came here. Shake Milton played big minutes with Philadelphia and seemed to kind of fit in with what Mike Conley does. So you'd have like a pseudo Mike Conley off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And credit to Tim Conley. I mean, he kind of salvaged it by trading for Monte Morris, who didn't play today until garbage time. But
Right.
I think Naz Reid taking another step, Nikhil taking another step, and then knowing that you have a J-Mac, Monte Morris to, you know, whoever's having the better game for your 8th or your 9th guy. I guess the only person that drags it down a little bit is Kyle Anderson. It was pretty disappointing to see the shooting fall off so much. And he's kind of to the point now where he's not even taking the shots in games. So whether it's a confidence thing or how he fits in the offense thing,
Right.
that's the only thing bench-wise I think we knock him for at this point.
I think that's more than fair to say. And he'll pop up once every 6, 7, 8 games, like the Denver game, right? 7 assists in the first half, really carried that team. It kind of made sure everybody was in line and playing crisp, clean, fundamental basketball, which is obviously his bread and butter. But I don't think he said anything off the wall there by any means when it comes to Kyle Anderson's season this year. The other A topic, I'm just thinking back to the beginning of the year now that 82 games have transpired. The other A topic was, you know, Cat evolving his role. You know, he talked about being a planet amongst the stars, whereas, you know, in past years, he felt like he needed to be the sun, so to speak. He needed to carry the team. How do you think all that shook out compared to preseason expectations from then to now? Do you think it meshed together as well as you hoped or what?
I think it meshed together better than I hoped.
Okay.
He didn't have a lot of hope for Karl guarding wings or playing power forward.
Yeah.
He's just so big, right? Like envisioning him guarding like a Pascal Siakam or Kevin Durant in today's game, like it just didn't seem like it would work. And credit to him, he's really made it work. I think the only other thing that I'd like to see out of Cat is just, you know, more so of just those weird plays where which again, he wouldn't be where he is as a player if he wasn't supremely confident. But not many people can make like cross-court bounce passes or behind the back passes in the paint. And I guess I'd say the other thing is just his role offensively. I mean, he kind of did a different role where you're shooting a lot of top of the key threes, less paint movements. And then his attitude, I can't think of a single scenario where he was egging the crowd on to say, refs, you suck, or
right. No, we've evolved a little bit there in that department there. Yeah, no, that's totally true. I thought you hit on a lot of good points there. Well said. Final parting thoughts before we get out of here. 82 games in the books, playoffs right around the corner next week. Final chance to empty the clip, so to speak. Anything else that's on your mind when you think about Timberwolves basketball as we sit here today?
I think if they lose in the first round, it'll be a pretty big disappointment. That being said, I've had season Wolves tickets for 7 years now, and looking back to me be getting excited over Alexei Shved coming off the bench is a playoff series is truly remarkable.
Great name drop, man. Unbelievable name drop. Yeah.
Can't say enough about the team. It's been such a fun season, and it'll be disappointing if they don't win a playoff series, but it was a heck of a ride.
All right, let's just play Debbie Downer here. Let's just say worst case scenario, as magical and as fun as this regular season was, let's say they do go one and done in the playoffs. Give me one bold move or prediction you think the Wolves, maybe should, have in the works. And the only reason I bring this up here, Andrew, there's a lot of people in the chat saying,
yeah,
you got to trade Karl-Anthony Towns next year. Some people said maybe it's Jaden McDaniels. He hasn't lived up to the hype. He's not worth the contract. But give me a bold mover prediction. Are you kind of on that same wavelength? Are you in that same realm? Or maybe something else off the wall we haven't thought of?
I think their only move would be trade Cat. Kyle's a free agent. He's probably walking unless they really want to go above the luxury tax. They're not going to trade Nas.
Yeah.
Jaden's not going to get traded unless something crazy happens where they can swing like Jaden and Cat for, I don't know.
And how much do you think the small sample size, though, of going 13-4 without Cat during some critical, huge juncture of the season in some huge moments in games, how much do you think that could ultimately play into the fact that they would be more willing, I guess, to move on from such a big name that's been here so long? When you think of the Timberwolves, Karl-Anthony Towns has been a face of the franchise for so long. How much do you think that, positive, successful stretch there of those 17 games could go into that equation?
I think it's a credit to Nas Reed.
Yeah.
He proved starter in this league. He proved that he can fill in and he can do that job very well. And if they do make a change, Nas Reed's proved that he can be a starter in this league and be very effective. And Cat's really the biggest chip they got.
Well said, man. Hey, I'm just thinking, all right, it took 82 games, but we finally got you on here. Loved every second of it. You know your stuff. Now we got you on the official T-Wolves postcast depth chart from here on out. I absolutely love it, man.
Yeah,
T-Wolves.
Luke.
Yeah, absolutely. T-Wolves get thumped by the Suns again, officially the 3 seed now. They get a full week of rest. They get to regroup, rally back, full playoff schedule. That should be out by night's end, so keep your eyes peeled for that. As always, huge shout out to all you guys that joined us on the stream. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. And quick reminder, too, go check out all Andrew's work on X at @ADukeMN over at zonecoverage.com. Anything up right now we can go check out, or anything you're working on for the Wolves heading into the playoffs we should check out?
I just put together a piece for yesterday, Saturday, on Anthony Edwards using the backboard and why, kind of the physics behind using the backboard and why no one uses it. To Tom Schreier's chagrin, I probably went about 400 words more than he wanted to.
Hey, don't worry about T. Schreier 3, all right? Me and him go way back. I'll take care of T. Schreier 3. You do you, man. If it's 400 words over, it's all good, man. Can't wait to check that out. Plus, make sure you check out the entire crew on the Minnesota Basketball Party. That's each and every Wednesday. And Ben Beacon, always killing it over on the Locked On Wolves podcast each and every day as well. All right, that'll do it for us tonight. He's Andrew Dukowitz. I'm Luke Inman on X at Luke_Spinman. We'll see you in the playoffs, but until then, signing out.